we're going to have our panelists come up if they would. We have 30 minutes to see what's new in the world of licensing and M&A. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Emmett Cunningham, investor and ophthalmologist. I'm going to have you do the honors of introducing yourselves. In addition to the sort of coordinates, your name and where you work and your position, tell us what your company does from a licensing perspective. What % of innovation is internal versus external? What sort of broad things are you looking for? Drugs, devices, maybe sub-therapeutic areas? I'll start at the far end with Naveed.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Naveed Shams. I'm the head of global R&D and the chief science officer for a company called Santen Pharmaceuticals. We are in the business of developing and focusing only in ophthalmology. We are about a 130-year-old company and have a worldwide presence. Most of our products that we have currently are partnered with other people, companies, licensed, although we do have some internal assets as well. But it's sort of a mix. Currently is predominantly licensed assets. And so we are into partnering big time, small companies, large companies. We have strong partnerships on the early side with academia, research institutes to help move products through into the development stage. We are interested in everything from anything that would help the patient, So in ophthalmology, of course, and from early stage to late stage, from small molecules, large molecules, cells, genes, devices, diagnostics. We would be really interested in having a chat with anybody who's interested in all of those areas. And we are headquartered in Japan, of course, but we have a presence in most countries and looking forward to having something in the US market as well.
So drugs and devices?
Yes.
And you said you want to be in the US market, and you signed this great deal with Glaukos to enter the US market. Is that the plan?
Yes, that. I was hoping you won't ask me that.
Let's delete that question.
But yes, we signed a distribution agreement with Glaukos for obvious reasons. That helps us to have a product on the market and get it to the patients as fast as we possibly can. Yeah. And hopefully next year that will happen. We still haven't filed, but it should happen soon.
Well, I asked because Glaukos is clearly a great partner to do that with. They've had great success, so and so it was only meant in that tone. Cal.
So I'm Cal Roberts, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Bausch and Lomb. So with the evolution of the ophthalmic industry, Bausch and Lomb is the only fully integrative eye care company. So we're now the only company that has pharmaceuticals, has surgical, has contact lenses, and has consumer. And what that does is gives us the opportunity to partner in any of those areas. And so when you're asking about licensing, I think there's two types of licensing. There's the licensing in which we acquire the product and bring it in-house and then work on it. But I think as equally as exciting for us is the opportunity where what we're doing is where our license actually allows a small company to continue to go and develop the product themselves, giving them non-dilutive funding, and then in exchange for some kind of option at the end when the product is fully developed. And so we have done that everywhere from the pharmaceutical area. And so take for examples like a product like Lumify, which is our great product there, and that's a product where we brought it in really just at the end, after they had developed that, and then contact lens area. So there we have the type of partnerships where we're active. So somebody has an idea for a great type of a contact lens, but they need somebody actually to make it. And so one partner that we have has this great idea for a type of contact lens. We make it, give it back to them, they work on it, iterate it again, give it back, we make some more, so that we're active. And so there's a combination of these kind of passive ones, where we're just giving funding and watching, and those that we participate ourselves.
So before I step on to Laurent, who is going to give us the big reveal, what percent of innovation at Santen is external, Naveed?
I think it will be difficult for me to give you a percent, but mostly. How about that?
Okay,
Yeah.
mostly. Cal?
Yeah, so it really depends on the division. So within surgical, I would say that the great majority, 85%, is internal. Contact lens, 85% internal. Pharma, 85% external. Consumer, probably somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Laurent, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked, Alcon drugs, devices, or both. So we can hear it right from the leader's mouth. Tell us what Alcon is and what you're looking for externally.
Absolutely. So obviously, I'm Laurent Attias. I head up business development and M&A and corporate development strategy. So first of all, I think that, to use the expression, we like to put our money in our mouth, where our mouth is. And so I was invited on panels like this about 3 years ago or something like that. And I think I've mentioned that Alcon was starting to migrate towards being agnostic to internal versus external. I could quote you a percentage, which I will, but we're not aiming for a particular percentage. What we believe, though, is that each space, so today we're a device company, and we have obviously the surgical side of ophthalmology, but also on the vision care and ocular health. And but really in both of those, we don't try to determine a certain mix, but we take it as it comes. So we think that, for example, when you think of the surgical side, obviously Alcon through the years have developed some very strong internal skill sets, whether it's in cataract or IOLs. But as the puck is moving a little bit in some of the things that we're trying to achieve with improving the outcomes, it brings in some other areas such as diagnostics, or even new types of IOLs, and where we like to complement our skill sets thanks to external partnership, or even acquire new skill sets. And that's true also in the space of vision care, and if you think about vision care, also handling the ocular health side of things, such as dry eye. And I think that we've publicly mentioned, at least on the surgical side, investing in some of the accommodating space with Power Vision, and then also with iLux on the dry eye. So I think that we really try to go for defining the strategic areas that we want to go into, and then evaluate which of our skill sets are either complementary or then new. And as far as staging of that activity, we're actually also agnostic. I think it's fair to say that in the past years, and now it's been quite a while, Alcon tended to be more late stage. But we've seen the benefit of being able to partner and to coin some of build to buy type of approaches or things like this. And it's not easy in a large corporation, because a large corporation is maybe have less of a stomach for the roller coaster ride, if you will. But we try to get there so that we can be a partner at any given stage, and only enter and do the heavy lifting on the areas that we believe are contributory to the skill set of the company. Some companies have, for example, very good regulatory capabilities, some don't, so therefore we would step in at that time, or we could step in earlier. So we kind of like to customize the approach based on the stage of the company, and therefore we think we have a nice synergy there and a win-win effort. But Frank Labellier, our head of R&D, is here, and he would be a testimony of that mix. So if you want to have a number, it is fair to say that at least in 2018, we were probably 60% of our projects were brought in from the external side. I think someone quoted the 17 partnerships that we've done, with a few of them being publicly announced. So that would be about right. But again, we're not searching for a particular mixed target.
And that was great. I'm not sure I heard an answer. Drugs, devices, and diagnostics are to be determined.
Well, all I can say is that when I hear some of the wonderful technologies in this meeting, they generally naturally seem to pull in some other areas. So as long as those areas are within the spaces of ophthalmology and things, I think we'll have a wide scope.
Good, great. Jehan?
So thank you for having me. We really appreciate being here. I'm Jehan Tamboowalla. I'm the head of new products for eye care at Novartis. And for us, what that means is really a focus on ophthalmics as well as digital medicines and things that would allow us to enhance the life and well-being of our patients, be it monitoring, diagnostics. So we sort of put in a broad scope, but we are really focused in on a couple of key therapeutic areas. So we sort of internally like to think of it as sort of the 4 Rs, so to speak. So, we're focusing on rare diseases, and as a lot of you know, we are the ex-US partner for Spark, for Luxturna. So that was one of our transactions last year for rare diseases. We are focused in on refractive and ocular surface disease. We signed an agreement with Lubris for ECF 843, which is one of our flagship products in our pipeline for ocular surface disease. For retina, as a lot of you know, brolucizumab, which initially was licensed in but largely developed within Alcon and then Novartis, has been filed with the FDA. What's the 4th R? Okay, so rare disease, refractive, retina, and regenerative medicine. So regenerative medicine is really our future focus. So I think our Institutes of Biomedical Research in Cambridge, our NIBR organization, is really looking to fundamentally change the biology and pathology of disease. And that's where we're looking. So our commitment to ophthalmology is we are here today, we're going to be here tomorrow, and we're actually investing for the long term, things that are 15 years out, 20 years out, that will fundamentally change the way we help our patients. To answer your question on how much of it is internal versus external, I think, Laurent actually said it best. For us, we are almost an agnostic to it. We're an open R&D platform. We look at inside innovation as well as external innovation. There was actually a speaker this morning that was great to point out is we may have 5,000 great scientists, but there are 150,000 great scientists outside. Why would we not look at them? So I think from our perspective, great science comes from everywhere, and if we're lucky enough to partner with a great organization, we're going to go ahead and do it. I think collectively, maybe a way I can answer the question is in the last 2 years, we've transacted publicly almost, I think, $2 billion in ophthalmic deals.
Good. Let me make a comment that may be inflammatory or provocative, and I want you to respond to it. Jehan can start. This is a home run industry, largely, or to some extent anyway. So the biggest products move the needles the most. We have drugs like adalimumab that are $10 billion and are tracking to $20 billion and really move the entire needle for the company, in this case, AbbVie. If I have a product that really doesn't have a $500 million or $1 billion potential, am I wasting my time talking to Novartis or the other companies?
I think our focus has been really on breakthrough and transformative medicine. So I think what we're looking at is what is the best that we can offer to our patients. If you really look at gene therapy in ophthalmics, our Luxturna opportunity was an opportunity for us to learn and also bring a truly transformative medicine to patients. I mean, if you have seen some of the videos out there for Luxturna patients, it really is taking them from blindness to sight. If we have an opportunity to do something like that, we would absolutely do it. But the truth of the matter is, if I mean, there's no other way to say this, but if you're going to come out with a 17th dexamethasone, frankly, we're not interested. I think we really want to look at breakthrough medicines that have the ability to transform the lives of patients. I'm sure it'll work at other organizations. It just is not for us.
Okay, Laurent?
Well, that's an interesting thing because the same way we talk about the yin and the yang between internal and external, we actually believe the same thing between incremental and transformative. I think in devices, given the fact that innovation comes from this wonderful partnership with the surgeon, you cannot not be in incremental, right? Because those are the little steps that keep making a product better. And I can tell you that we have large segments of our business, VIT being one, cataract being one, that have been able to turn in some quite healthy growth rates thanks to incremental innovation. We also believe that how exactly do you determine what's going to be transformative? You have early signs, but in this room, you probably have people that were there making the first forecast for Lucentis or for Restasis, and none of those forecasts were ever at the level of what actually achieved those things achieved. So I don't know, I have a crystal ball, but it's not as good as being able to predict what this blockbuster is going to be. But I do believe that we can think about and invest in, which we have, in things that could be transformative from what the current, for example, surgery is being done. And therefore would be willing to do that and take on the challenge of taking the industry in that direction if we believe it's the right transformation. But we equally believe in innovation, especially as with a device thinking, that incremental, when you compound the effect of that, you start off with one generation, and the fourth and fifth generation could be tremendously different. And at every stage, bringing new enablement of that surgery for safety or efficiency or whichever it might be, or outcomes, where therefore you cannot not look at those smaller amounts, as you said, because you were quoting some amounts. And so, no, we're open to a lot of that because the market will determine what's the uptake after that.
I actually was on the team that did the first anti-VEGF projections for Macugen at the time, and it was 1 to 2 billion because after all, the patient has the other eye. So we got that wrong. It was 10 billion and growing.
Yeah, so I think that there's a huge opportunity for products that are in the 10, 20, 40, 80 million dollar a year in sales. And so that, yes, at Bausch & Lomb, we are open to business for those products. And when it comes to incremental innovation, sometimes there's just some great science. So at this meeting, we're launching Lotemax SM, which is the newest fourth generation of loteprednol. But the new technology there is really impressive. And the efficacy of the drug is so much better because of the new technology that's gone into it. So it really is exciting. So not every new launch is something in a whole new field. So like Lumify was a whole new field. We're getting into redness reliever. But the next generation of Lotemax is equally exciting.
So from Santen's side, I'll give you two examples first. One of them you're very familiar with, sirolimus. Not $1 billion market at all, but there's a huge unmet need in that space for non-steroidals to treat the patients. And so we, at one point, you have to make that call where, are you really, really only going to focus on something that brings in X amount of dollars, or something that's going to really, really make the quality of life of the patient really at the center stage and make a huge difference. The second one is, you asked me about, is the Micro Shunt. It's designed for a small segment at the end of it, but that's where we think that the unmet need really, really is. We can make life easier for the patient and make life easier for the surgeon. They can go sleep at night, not worry about how many sutures I have to lysis tomorrow. And so that also is not $1 billion product. But it addresses real unmet need. And it is innovative in its own way. That's okay, but that's basically what it is. I wanted to share with you just one quick example of how we ignore the patient in all of this. And so this is a friend of mine. He's not in ophthalmology. Very good European company. They make products for the skin. And when they ask their patients, they're making creams and gels and everything else. So if you really talk to the patient, what innovation are you looking for? This one patient comes in who has dermatitis and psoriatic disease, skin disease. She takes the tube, puts a paper on the floor, newspaper, puts the tube on the floor, opens it, and then steps on it. It squirts out. She takes the paper and rubs it on her skin. So for her, if I can make that kind of, it's not from rocket science, but for that patient, just squeezing the bottle, sticking, on your hands, it takes you 10 minutes to get off that darn cream, that would be innovative for that patient and make a big difference in the quality of life. Even that would be, I think, very beneficial. So we would be happy to talk about it if there is something like that that the patient can live with. Those are incremental, they are not rocket science, but I think the patient is looking for things like that and not quite, sophisticated options necessarily.
Okay, Jehan, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I fully respect the opinions of my panelists, and I think one of the things I just wanted to mention, we look at opportunities in ophthalmology, and there are opportunities for great blockbusters in ophthalmology. I think we've talked about myopia, we've talked about presbyopia, we've talked about dry eye. Those are just 3 areas that, have drugs with multi-billion-dollar potentials for the right drug. Because I think at the end of the day, it's not just getting the drug approved that's important. What's important is, are you going to get reimbursed? And I think that is a huge challenge if you come out with a Me Too. It goes without saying. And for example, one of the questions that was earlier on one of the panels on transactions, if a strategic is looking at you, if they don't see a path forward to reimbursement, there is no market for them, no matter how good the science. So I think it's really, really important to make sure that you have a lot of the information, a lot of the work done to make that really a possibility. Ophthalmology has great potential. I think there's great science that's emerged over the last 3 years. Come on, we had the first gene therapy approved in ophthalmology. Wow, how good is that? That speaks to what the potential is in this area. And we should nurture that and grow that. And I think our goal is to do that.
So I want to talk for a second about mature subsectors. In the 11 years I've been at the podium here, I've been fortunate enough to see a few of those grow quite a bit. Dry eye would be one. We saw a slide at the breakfast breakout at Holland. I think it had 3 or 4 dozen clinical stage development candidates, glaucoma, and then MIGS. They'd all be sectors that have multiple approved products now. And so I want to hear how each of you would counsel an entrepreneur who has an asset in that's an early stage asset in that sector, clearly not going to be the 3rd or 4th or 5th approved. What do they need to keep in mind? What do they need to show you when they come to you with an agent that's either dry eye or pressure lowering or a MIGS type approach for glaucoma surgery? Can they, if there's no traction at the bigger companies, can they go it alone ever with those? So I'll let anyone answer who wants to pick one or any of those topics and comment.
Okay, well, I'll start off with glaucoma drugs. And so we had the situation with Vyzulta. And so that we had the opportunity to license Vyzulta, and the question that we had was, well, why would we want to license in this drug that was a branded drug if it was not any better than the gold standard of generic latanoprost? And so first thing we had to do was do a head-to-head study of Vyzulta versus generic latanoprost to show that it was superior. And so that is always the first criteria when I'm speaking to a company. So when a company says, I have a new drug that lowers intraocular pressure, and I go, great, have you done a head-to-head comparison to latanoprost? And the answer is usually no. And so it's not good enough that your drug lowers intraocular pressure. It has to be that much better than a really cheap and effective alternative that is worth the development for it. And so the same thing would go into another area if you wanted to develop a shunt. So yes, your shunt works, but there are a lot of great shunts out there. Why is your shunt superior to what's on the market? And by the way, what will be on the market 4 or 5, 6 years from now?
So just to push on that a bit, it's almost as if you're saying you want a fully characterized product profile, and you want to know what that product profile is in comparison to its competitors. So that's a phase 3 data set.
Well, it's actually, we did it as a phase 2, the comparison of Vyzulta to generic latanoprost. Right.
So at least at phase 2 for those crowded markets, and it's a robust phase 2.
Correct.
Does anyone disagree with that?
No.
Do you think if someone has a product that, let's say it's comparable to latanoprost or it's comparable to the market leader in dry eye, whatever that is, and the big companies are not interested partners, is there any path to go it alone in this world to sell now that we have optometry being 60% of dry eye, for example? And is there a path forward as a freestanding company?
So I think I'll join Jehan by saying that the point of being the third or fourth, you mentioned dexamethasone, I think it's probably not a great formula for success, but it doesn't mean that the mature segments that you're talking about cannot be transformed. If you think about MIGS, actually, it tried to hone on a key unmet need in the management of glaucoma. It's not that the agents don't reduce IOP. I think they're pretty satisfactory in their safety profile as well. But we have a compliance issue, and therefore we are trying to circumvent, right, the patient's compliance by novel methods that it could be surgical. And so I think that Naveed actually tried to speak to that with his cream example, that sometimes even the packaging or things like that can take a mature segment and bring an innovation that could actually be worth a lot of growth for the company and satisfy the patient. And it comes in delivery method, it comes in packaging, it comes in with the same agents. So I am less inclined to go for something that's going to be incrementally better, to where it's a little bit the law of diminishing returns. Because, by the way, sometimes they come with a different safety profile, one that may not be as a good as it. Anyway, but it's just too much of a diminishing return versus a differentiation that allows for a swing of that mature market towards a new management, perhaps, of that disease, or an easier utilization by the patient. And I think then there's great growth opportunity even in the mature market.
I want to talk for a second about China. I think it's really impressed me over the last few years that we see so much money, investment money, coming out of China. And it often has the mandate of developing, of course, in North America and Europe, but also bringing it back to China for all the obvious and appropriate reasons. And one has to believe that they know how to do it well because they're Chinese nationals and they know the system and they know what it takes to advance those. What do you think the impact of this money and these investors and China's activity in the space, what impact is that going to have on the sector at large over the next 5 to 10 years, in your opinion? Any of you?
So we have a strong business presence in China for the last 20-some years, head-to-head, neck-to-neck with Alcon, 14, 15, some percentage like that. And so that's a huge strategic space for us. And the thing to remember about China is that at this point, in my view at least, they are not interested in low level. They have plenty of generics. They have plenty of people who can copy things and put them on the local market. They're interested in the next regenerative medicine and the next bispecific or trispecific or quad-specific, whatever, something that's more innovative and where they can then do the mass sort of production of. They have the market, they have the people, and they have trained people, a lot of them trained in the US. And so what was lagging behind was the regulatory environment and the pricing and reimbursement is catching up. So as that catches up, I think these guys are shrewd enough to know that it will catch up pretty soon. And then it will become an ecosystem for really innovative products where you can do business there.
Do you think we'll see more innovation in China than in North America in 10 years?
You know, there is
15
one
years?
hurdle, in my view, again. There's one hurdle, which is, do we have enough trained people to actually use innovation, consume that innovation? And that they're lagging behind. They have to train a lot of people. We were talking about it this morning, we don't even have enough ophthalmologists here now to take care of everybody. So that technical gap needs to be addressed. And yes, then the answer to your question is.
So the other big presence was Alcon, Novartis. Would either of you like to comment on your views?
So I can speak from Novartis' perspective. I think I fully agree. I think from an ophthalmology perspective, it's actually a really good thing to have that those funds coming in and driving innovation in our industry. I think at the end of the day, that's what's really going to make the difference for our patients. It's opening up new areas, looking at innovative ways of getting medicines to patients. And I think there are local expertise that we just simply won't have. So from that perspective, partnering and working with and it's not just in China. It could be India, you know, it could be anywhere else. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for ophthalmology to grow beyond the developed markets. And frankly, you know, it's going to be different diseases, different medicines. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I mean, this is great for us.
Laurent, last
Well,
word?
Asia has been a great growth opportunity for us and continues to be. We probably are going to have to think about partnering locally, although we've done some of the challenges always is some of the things like the standards and quality and things like that. But it's not to say that we probably should all think of designing products with more of those markets in mind from the get-go. I don't think that we do that as well as we should. And therefore, it might start tailoring the product offering more to capture but then also you do have a bit of a regulatory path that's a bit challenging as well there. But clearly, I think that in the future, looking at either partnering or owning innovation that is more localized could be helpful to developing those markets further, but they represent a great growth opportunity for sure.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.